call, please.
Chair Malone.
Here.
Vice Chair Collins.
Here.
Member Hansen is absent. Members Leonard.
Here.
Ryan. Here. Shu.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Young.
Present.
Okay, Tara, could you lead us in the pledge, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, before we get started, the public may submit comments regarding items on this agenda or any matter within the jurisdiction of the Economic Development Advisory Council electronically or telephonically. Please note the public may not speak twice on the same agenda item by using both mediums. For electronic comments, email your comments to edac@ci.norco.ca.us and please identify the item you are referencing. For telephonic communications, call 951-582-5557 when directed. Callers will be placed in a queue and will be alerted when the 3-minute speaking period begins. Calls will be answered in the order that they were received. Please note the public is required to call in for each agenda item which they wish to speak on. The Economic Development Advisory Committee requests callers abide by the public decorum and use language that is appropriate for a professional, respectful public environment. Now is the time to submit your comments for item 2. Please dial 951-582.
Excuse me. Sorry, we need to do item 1A first.
Oh, let's do 1A first, sorry. I need a motion on approval of minutes.
I motion that we approve the minutes from last meeting.
I'll second.
Chair Malone.
Yes.
Vice Chair Collins.
Yes.
Members Leonard.
Yes.
Ryan. Shu.
Yes.
Webb.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Got it. Okay, now I'll read item 2. Now is the time to submit your comments for item 2. Please dial 951-582-5557 now.
There are no public comments.
Okie dokie. Let's go to item 3. 3A, we have verbal discussion on the exploratory committee findings related to parking restrictions on the Hamner Avenue. So, Roger, would you like to introduce that, please?
Well, I'm going to let the committee speak on this, but I just want to interject. In terms of protocol, this is not the time to fully discuss this issue or make specific recommendations to the City Council. This discussion should be focused on whether or not you deem this topic within the purview of EDAC's mission and whether or not you want to bring it forward for further deliberation and potential recommendation to the City Council. So, and of course, you have the opportunity to say, after reviewing it, we've decided that it really does not merit further EDAC action. That's always a possibility. So with that, I'll just defer to the committee. I know that whoever the committee chair is. Or
okay, we'll go through to the committee, let them present, and then following that, we'll go around the room and do questions.
Okay, so with that in mind, I understand some of this presentation is kind of contrary to what Roger said because we had kind of had some conclusions within the subcommittee, but I'm just going to present it in what we discussed. So on February 9th, 2021, Vice Chair Collins, Member Henson, and I met to discuss the topic of street side parking along Hamner Avenue. Our 3-member subcommittee found that there was definite economic impact that would result from this decision. So therefore, within our opinion, we thought that it was within the purview of EDAC and worth further discussion. I can end there, or I can kind of go down further and discuss our kind of primary talking points.
Why don't you go ahead and talk through it and
Okay. So within our discussion, we focused on three primary topics. One is safety. The second one is impact to business on Hamner. And then the third one was what the implications may be for business at large in Norco. So on the topic of safety, we were in agreement that safety is definitely a concern if we allow parking on it, that if street side parking were allowed, we would definitely want to see a minimum width requirement to ensure safety. And I think Chad had brought this up, that what we would consider to be minimum width would be kind of the full developed width, such as the area south of 4th and Hamner. Now, on the topic of impact to business on Hamner, we had a few concerns. We wanted to feel like we're welcoming to business that are local on Hamner, present and future. And we want to acknowledge the off-street parking is a challenge for a lot of businesses. But we also felt that it was outweighed by the concern of showing fairness to other businesses who had to comply with the Norco Municipal Code regarding off-street parking. One of the other things is that the concern on if we were to make allowances for businesses to use street parking to satisfy their off-street parking is the precedence that it sets. Especially during this time of COVID, we know that a lot of businesses are trying to do outdoor dining, and as part of the requirement when you're converting part of the parking is that we have to justify that the residual parking still meets the parking count. So if we start allowing businesses to use off-street parking as part of that calculation to satisfy the parking, what that means for other businesses along the way who have had to comply with that and who may be at a disadvantage because of this. And then the kind of the last item on within item 2 is that we felt that there's a lot of discrepancy in the street signage and the actual city resolution. I spoke with Chad about this, and there's 2 different resolutions which essentially only allow parking at the auto mall. And then a subsequent one, the first one was for limited time, and then the second one was to remove the 1-hour restriction. But really, it only talked about the auto mall, and it was not very specific on exactly what the auto mall distance was. So because of the discrepancies in the code, we felt that this is definitely something that we would want to have some clarity and consistency on. And then the number 3 one is really just the item that we discussed. It was more of an elaboration on number 2, that if we start allowing exceptions for businesses, what that means for business in Norco at large who are not on Hamner, if we start making allowances for different parking requirements. So with that, our 3-person subcommittee was actually we actually changed some minds, and after a discussion among us 3, we felt that it was more conducive to safe and fair business environment if the street side parking was not allowed.
Thank you. Okay, let's go around the room. Tara, would you have any comments you'd like to make or observations?
Kind of. Is it possible that maybe we can take it, exception by exception based off of the business? Because for one business, it may be beneficiary and some it may not. So perhaps it may be within our code, it's allowable, but the businesses itself need to apply for that change within the front of their business. So, so that way it's just based off of that area. I don't know if that's possible or not. So that way it's benefiting each and every business and their individual needs.
So really by exception, essentially?
Yeah.
Okay.
My challenge with that is that becomes subjective. We're getting this type of business into this building, and no, we're going to let them have street, and then it's like, well, why do they have it and I don't? And it becomes, and that was one of the reasons that Chad brought it to us in the first place, is because of the burden on his department, making that type of determination. And he was looking for some clarity to be able to just say, this is it, it's black and white. And for the business community as a whole, I think black and white works a lot better than subjectiveness.
And if I may, excellent conversation, but probably best reserved for the next time we meet on this topic, providing it goes forward.
Yeah, Mike, do you have any comment about going forward with the?
About
Sure.
some of the restaurants.
Okay.
Ended up with less parking than more parking.
Right. So Vicky, do you think this should go forward to the next level or kill it?
I'm kind of torn because the parking situation, I mean, economically, yeah, if we don't have parking for people, they're going to be economically impacted. So if we take away all parking, it could impact, and Hamner is built in such a way that there can't be parking on all of Hamner. But where there's an area for parking, I don't have any problem with people parking where it's safe. If it's not safe, you don't park there, like any other street. If it's safe, you park there. So, I mean, I
So it's something that we should probably look into
Yeah.
further. Okay.
sure.
Diane? Anything? Okay. I've got three comments. The first one is on the resolutions. There's two of them you said that we have on the books already. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, so
Right. Okay. And, okay, and then I guess the third piece of that is, Roger, do you know what the long-term plan is for Hamner? Or is it going to be widened after they get the bridge done? Or do you have any idea?
The desire is to get it widened. There have been ongoing efforts to acquire property to get it widened to its full width,
So if
the
that's the
entire
case-
length. Yeah.
If that's the case, it'll be like a 6-lane type throughway with a left turn lane or something?
Well, that's the aspiration. Yeah.
Okay. Sigrid, do you have any comments?
I want to commend Jeff and the rest of that committee, because the information that he provided was great. And it made me start to think a little bit more about this. I do believe that we need to have further discussion on this, but I'd also wonder if maybe the subcommittee might not meet with Streets and Trails, since it's going to affect them, and maybe, 3 from our group, 3 from their group, really put their heads together and figure out what we can do so we don't impact our retail establishments, but we also protect their economic, stability. So
Right.
I think a further discussion on this, with both coming together, would probably be best.
Okay, thanks. I think that you're right. I think that the group should be collaborative with all the stakeholders essentially. So because we've got a lot of plans going, they're starting to build the bridge now. All that, there's a lot of activity. So I think it'll have to be revisited eventually.
And
Andy,
can
do
I-
you have any comment?
Real quick, can I also request that maybe when we have this conversation, it's not in this setting, maybe it's in a smaller conference room where we can use the whiteboard again, and we can start putting things so we can really collaborate together?
Maybe a
'Cause
workshop.
That worked in the past.
Yeah, maybe a workshop or something like that. Sure.
Hold on, sorry. Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Are you asking for a private meeting, as in like the same setting that the exploratory committees are meeting, or a public meeting with identified members from EDAC, and it would be 2 members from Streets and Trails, if you're looking to not have a quorum?
I think I would,
With that, you can have like a private meeting in the way that the committees are breaking out and having them.
but could we all be present at that exploratory if we're
That would be a
just-
public
that
meeting
would be a
because
public
you'll have a
meeting.
quorum in the room.
Right. I'd almost recommend maybe plan a workshop in the future if we decide to go forward. That way you can get other people's input.
Can I
And those seem
suggest
to work well.
that maybe our next step is for our subcommittee to meet with Streets and Trails?
I would say meet with Streets and Trails get some more information and then maybe make a recommendation to council to put together a workshop.
Or bring it here where we can all just discuss it.
Yes, that before our next meeting, that we try to meet with Streets and Trails. Roger, it's that.
Yeah, so we can look into the Streets and Trails meeting, but not official meeting, but informally.
Yeah,
Right.
subcommittee.
Just in terms of scheduling, I was hoping that should you move forward with this topic, which it appears will happen, that it come back. I know the Public Works Director is very anxious to return to City Council with feedback from EDAC. So the sooner we can bring this back to the entire EDAC board, the better. So I was kind of thinking maybe in April, you could actually make a recommendation on this.
I have a question.
Let me get Andy's input real quick, and then with Jeff, if you have any closing questions,
Thank you.
Then I'll make some recommendations. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little torn on this as well, because I'm thinking about, okay, economic development, and that's the purview I'm looking under. Safety is somebody else's purview. That would be, planning, whatever. We have to be cognizant of it, but we have to think about economic development. And, to make a blanket statement on how everything in the city should operate without any exceptions, I think is risky to economic development. But, right now, it's being managed by exception. It's my understanding, whether it's exception by council or exception by whomever. So the exception is with the auto mall. Now, maybe that needs to be defined a little bit more. But in all reality, there's certain areas that are going to be safe. There's certain areas that are not going to be safe. So in my opinion, this should be managed by exception. And in the risk of going against everybody else in this committee, I would say this is not necessarily an EDAC issue if it's going to be managed by exception. That's my opinion on that. And so, if I was to, I would say I wouldn't move forward with it just because of that. And it's more of a safety issue than an EDAC issue.
Hey, Jeff, did you have any final comments?
No, I think it kind of covered it. Just to kind of respond to Andy, I believe it does have a business impact, because if you're new business coming in, and especially if you're looking to locate on a property in Hamner, I think clarity on this would be really important to them.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but I still think that it's going to be a safety issue. That's what's going to drive whether they're going to have parking or not. So if you've got an area that it's safe, and just because you put a business there doesn't mean you're going to be able to get parking. If you get an area that is safe to put parking, then it's really up to the city to decide that exception or not.
Right, okay. Roger, one last comment for you. So you're looking to get a recommendation from us next month?
Yeah, I know that was the desire of the Public Works Director. If it goes another, if we have to push it another month, if there's good cause to push it another month, that's fine.
And his
Sooner
charter,
the better, I guess, is my
and what
my
is
point.
his charter? He needs to go make a recommendation to City Council then?
Yeah, City Council specifically asked him to bring back some feedback from EDAC. Now, he was able, he got a little on his first visit here, but I think after to hear the final recommendations or the final deliberations of this group would be helpful.
So I like the recommendation to meet with Streets and Trails as a private meeting with the 3 and the 3 group, so it'd be 6 people. Can that happen that way?
I will find more information about that.
Do we even have trails right there?
Pardon me?
Yeah, are there trails on Hamner there?
No, but it's a street.
Streets
Yeah,
and
but
Trails. It's a Streets and Trails Committee, so it's both.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate for us to meet with
So-
Streets and Trails. But I think that we could come back with like an actual presentation rather than just the initial findings, with an
Right.
actual presentation, including what we find from Streets and Trails. If we can get the meeting with Streets and Trails in time, I think that we can come back and hopefully be able to do that at our next meeting.
So here's what my recommendation is that we should do is, the first thing is meet with Streets and Trails on a private meeting.
I'm sorry, before you make any recommendations, can you call for public comments?
Like,
Or motions? Can you call for public comments on this?
yes. Sorry, thank you. Could we get some public comments? If there's any comments, please, now's the time to submit comments for item 3A. Please dial 951-582-5557 now.
Okay, there are no public comments. I do have some input from the Public Works Director, though, pertaining to your request about a joint meeting. His feedback is that from recent discussions with the Streets, Trails, and Utilities Commission, they did not object to no parking on all of Hamner. The City Council's reason for coming to EDAC was to receive EDAC feedback related to the economic impact of saying no parking. So if you're looking for a joint meeting, he would like to know the nature of your questions a little bit more.
I'll defer to the subcommittee or exploratory committee regarding economic development and Streets and Trails.
You know, since I was the one that brought up that they should meet together, I think the fact that the subcommittee brought up safety and the impact to business with or without the parking warrants having that conversation with Stuck. And I think that's really what it comes down to. So they can ask Stuck what they felt about the parking or what they felt about the streets, and then come back and, as Diane said, bring us a presentation that we can physically look at, take in, and then make a recommendation to City Council.
So I suppose that we could get real-time feedback from them and push back essentially on the impacts with economic development to collaborate to make that a good solution, whatever it turns out to be. Yes. Yes.
So, as EDAC, we're supposed to help bring income and business to Norco.
That's correct.
So if where it's safe, they have an hour limit, hour and a half, 2 hour, whatever limit, there's two impacts. One is the people that are shopping have a place to park. Two, if they pass that limit, the city writes tickets and has income that way. If you have no parking and there's parking available, people will get pissed off because why can't I park here? It's safe.
Right.
And so it's a safety issue. One,
Right.
the city should, where you can park, you should be able to park. If they want to put limits up and make money that way, go for it.
Right.
I mean, it's cut and dry if you ask me.
Totally hear where you're coming from. So I think that there's more to it than that. I think in order to expedite this recommendation, though, is the exploratory committee should meet with Streets and Trails in the next 2 weeks or so, come up with some recommendations or some presentation to give to EDAC either the next month or a special meeting earlier, so that we can come up with a recommendation for the council next month in April. And then Streets and Trails, I would think, would have some information on the long-term plan, particularly since they're widening the road. That may change all this parking and make it a moot point, but we're not sure because we don't have the information
What about
yet.
talk to the businesses that might be affected?
Then Streets and Trails, I would hope, would be talking to those folks as well.
That was going to be my question. Jeff, did your committee, and I didn't know who else was on, Diane, you were on it too. Did you actually talk to the businesses on Hamner and ask their input on whether they like the parking in front of their establishments?
Okay.
Maybe we need to get business input, because it's going to impact them.
We approached it more as looking at not current situation, but into the future as well. And that was I think, more of our focus versus, oh, do you like parking in front of your business or whatever? But what would be the impact if there was no parking on Hamner for future businesses moving in? Yes, there would be some impact to the current businesses, but very, very few of them even have parking out front.
Yeah, I think that what's going to happen is if we make a recommendation to the city council, they're going to move forward with it, and Public Works is going to take the lead on it, most likely, with Streets and Trails and us participating. But then eventually it's going to have to go out for public comment. And at that time, I believe the businesses will have their opportunity to provide input. So
Yes.
what we're trying to do here is decide whether we should go forward and make a recommendation to council. That's it. So getting additional information from Streets and Trails and us would be good. And then what I said earlier is if we need to have a special meeting to line everything up, and then for April, we'll make a recommendation or not.
I'm questioning with Kelly's statement that per Public Works Director, that Streets and Trails is not opposed to no parking, period, if we do need to meet with them.
Well, I think
If that's their stance already.
I think the dialogue that you would get directly interfacing with them would be valuable.
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, if you don't think so, then don't meet. I don't care.
Roger?
Well, yeah, my only thought is, their mission clearly intersects with yours, but they're not aligned necessarily. We'd like you guys, safety obviously, as Jeff pointed out, is a major issue, but it's not the issue that should really govern your recommendations on this.
That's right. So I would recommend that the exploratory committee meet.
Sorry, may I interrupt you? The Public Works Director is available to call in if you'd like him as part of this conversation before you decide whether this needs to be a joint discussion with Stuck. You want to take him up on that?
Yes.
Okay. Bring him in.
Just trying to be efficient here. Hello?
Hello, this is Chad.
Okay, you're on.
Hi, Chad.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is Chad Blaze, Director of Public Works.
Hey. Go ahead.
Sorry I couldn't be there today. I had a planned vacation with family, but I figured I'd call in since Kelly was asking me questions. Might help answer anything you guys want clarification on.
Okay, so what we've been discussing, this is Pat, what we've been discussing is the fact that we should perhaps meet with a subcommittee of the Streets and Trails along with Economic Development, so it would be up to 6 folks talking and interfacing to talk through the economic development impacts as well as the safety with Streets and Trails. And also, I think that there'll be an element of long-term planning, particularly because they're building the bridge. The road will probably be widened in the long term, as to whether on-street parking would still be viable and feasible, and should we recommend another resolution over and above what's already on the books. So that's what the discussion's about.
Gotcha. Again, we can easily create a little subcommittee on the Stuck side if that's the desire of EDAC before making any type of recommendation. We can certainly ask a couple folks from Stuck to meet with a couple folks from EDAC and to talk about the issues that you're concerned with. And from that, there can be a general recommendation or a group recommendation that's offered to each of the separate commissions. And then, but again, the intent was, just for background, is that, staff recommended there be no parking anytime on all Hamner as far as for future. Council directed to staff was to just bring the issue back to EDAC at the time, so to get their feedback, mainly because of the economic impacts of potentially removing parking for the businesses. At the same time, I've also had the discussion with the Stuck Committee previously, not as a decision. Mainly, I informed them as part of a general discussion, and when I reviewed all the no parking for citywide, we reviewed that with Stuck, and we mentioned to them that the issue on Hamner is not resolved and is being at this time reviewed by EDAC as a consideration because council requested that review by them. And during that discussion with Stuck, they did give me feedback in general that there were safety concerns for them about allowing parking on site, but they also understand the economic potential impacts on the businesses. So the feedback from EDAC was appropriate, and they were interested in hearing what that feedback would be. And ultimately, I would bring that feedback back to them if EDAC decided independently of a recommendation. I would certainly take that back to Stuck and say, here's what EDAC came back with. Here's the concerns, or here's the positives and negatives towards promoting that, or they want to actually expand and actually do allow on-site parking, and here's how they've developed a recommendation or a plan of how that could be accomplished. So it can go any different direction, and we'd certainly review that with Streets and Trails prior to going back to council, because I want to make sure that I would have a consensus that each group touched that, and because there's a nexus to it, and having a comment from each group, and before I brought it out to council, because they're going to want to know what groups did we meet with, and how do we come to this ultimate recommendation that council is being asked to consider.
Right.
In that process, we could easily facilitate if EDAC prefers doing a small ad hoc committee or discussion just with one or two of the members that we can relay your concerns and you can talk about theirs, and ultimately both groups would need to go back to their respective groups and talk about what was discussed and what the concerns are, and what decisions need to be made at that point.
Okay.
But we can facilitate whatever EDAC would like in regards to helping get information or more knowledge before making any recommendation.
Right. So that's exactly it. I mean, our group here is kind of split as far as on or parking or no parking in certain areas, as well as safety and economic development. And I think that would be value added if they met with Streets and Trails to interact and probably make a better decision to the city council based on that information. So our recommendation is to put together a couple ad hoc committees, actually our exploratory committee and your ad hoc committee with Streets and Trails, and have them collaborate a little bit, and then we'll come back with a recommendation.
Okay, yeah, we can coordinate that, and that's not a problem. And Roger and I can work that out as far as talking with both groups and the representatives of that, and when we'll discuss it, and as long as, like I said, you guys have your details as far as the things you're concerned with, we're happy to sit down and talk about all of it and figure out what we can do. That
sounds great. Okay. Well, we'll coordinate with Roger and the exploratory committee then and get that done.
Pat,
Great, appreciate it.
I did have
discussing the item.
Sorry.
Jeff has one question here.
Well, it's actually more for us at large. One of the things is that before the exploratory committee met together, both Diane and I, after Chad's presentation, we were actually for limited street side parking. And Diane was the one that was kind of against it flat out. At this point, I'm pretty confident in saying that our 3 people subcommittee are pretty confident about the no parking along Hamner.
Okay.
And so my concern is that if we went to Streets and Trail with our same 3 subcommittee, there isn't an advocate in the room to put parking there. So I'm kind of at a loss on how to best proceed forward, because I feel like if we just met with Streets and Trail with the same people, that there wouldn't be an advocate for the other side that we're experiencing here.
I think we have an advocate down on the end over here. Is that right? You an advocate, Vicki? Or not?
I'm also an advocate.
And Tara. So we can have up to 4 people on this subcommittee. So.
Hey, it's all about economics, right?
So whoever's the fighter.
I also think that we need to ask the businesses on Hamner what economic impact they believe, not that they will have, but that they believe they will have if that parking is taken from them. I think with that, then we have that full circle, and then we could truly bring a solid, recommendation to city.
Okay.
I'll just jump in there real quick. I think, I would recommend that if whatever group that you want to have on as representatives for the little subcommittee, that if you could have opposing viewpoints on there, I think it's always beneficial. Whether or not that needs to be if someone physical that actually wants to advocate for the opposite, or if it's simply, again, making sure that those that are there are at least representing the concerns of the group. But again, I would always defer to the EDAC committee's discretion as far as who they want on that, best representing the group's concerns and ideas. But it may be best if somebody's willing to volunteer kind of on both sides, so you have an advocate for both concerns, whether there is parking or no parking. That'd probably be beneficial.
Okay.
I'll leave that entirely to the EDAC's discretion of who they would like to select for that to represent them on that on the smaller subcommittee.
That's a good recommendation. We'll take care of that here in a second. Thank you.
And I'll do similar on the stock. I don't believe there's too much of a negative as far as I think general consensus. They were fine with no parking, but I will certainly poll them to find out if there's anyone who has concerns for the opposite, and make sure that concerns are represented if need be.
Right. Great.
Are there any other questions for Chad?
No.
Okay, thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So I guess we could have up to 4. So Vicky and Tara, why don't you guys decide who wants to represent between the two of you, and we'll figure it out.
I'm fine.
I'm fine with that, either way.
Depends on when we meet, because
Well-
of my store. Like, I'm kind of the chief cook and bottle washer.
Can I provide some insight into a meeting schedule or logistics? So the Streets and Trails Commission meets on the first Monday in April. So based on what Chad said, if EDAC's selection and Stuck selection met privately in an ad hoc setting, then that would give them time for Stuck's representatives to go back to the full commission and report out at their scheduled meeting in April, which obviously takes place then before EDAC's scheduled meeting in April, and then that would still keep us on track for EDAC to give an ultimate recommendation to the City Council in its April meeting.
I think that's
You said first Monday?
I believe it's the first Monday in April.
So for us to go to their
2
meeting is what you're
weeks.
saying?
2 weeks.
I'm sorry?
For us to go to their meeting or to meet
No,
before
for
they
the ad
have
hoc
their
committee
meeting?
to meet separately
Yeah, okay.
or privately before that meeting, as the Public Works Director
No,
said.
I'm happy to be part of it.
So within the next 2 weeks, we have to do it.
Okay, so just tell me, let me,
Okay. So I'll let the exploratory committee then to manage that schedule.
Can you please state who will be attending this meeting?
Well, I
Representing
believe it's
EDAC?
the exploratory committee, which is now Jeff, Secret, and Diane, and then we'll add Vicky.
No, Nicole.
I mean, is it Nicole?
Jeff, Nicole, and I.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
And then Tara, Vicky, which one of you?
for me, it just depends on when the meeting is. Is it during the workday? It just,
Well,
yeah, depends. But yes, I'm happy to be on it. Either one of us.
However
So
you guys decide, I
choose.
don't really care.
I'm fine with it. Have a vote. I don't care.
so it will
If
be.
I can't,
it
Tara
will be
will. How's
Vicky.
that?
It will be Vicky, unless there's a scheduling conflict, and we'll
Then
have Tara
Tara
as an
will.
alternate.
Okay, perfect.
And we're
Thank
in
you.
contact all the time with each other.
I love it.
I just want to look at it from the economic standpoint, not just, no parking.
Okay. I think we're done with that one. Is there any other updates on the other 2 exploratory committees? Have they met yet, or is there plans to meet?
For technology, we will be meeting next Wednesday.
Okay.
7 o'clock.
Okay. And then see. Okay, excellent.
Should be this week.
Very good. That brings us to item 5, staff communications. Do you have any other inputs? Okay. With that, we will adjourn the meeting.
I heard recently that the Holiday Inn has pulled out.
We've been in discussions with the owner. We have not received any indication of that. No, I know that he's without going into details. I mean, the project has had fits and starts throughout the years. So, but there's no official indication of that. No. And frankly, if there was by that property owner, we would be speaking with Intercontinental Hotel Group to find another developer that might be able to purchase the property and step into his shoes, because it's an entitled project. It would be very simple for an experienced hotel developer to proceed with the same project. So.
Great.
I also see that CarMax has resumed and they're underway, which is really nice. And I don't know if you all know, but a new butcher shop just opened on Hamner over by 6th Street on that little strip there. Bronx Butchery it's called. And so that's exciting to see a new business come in. We need to applaud them when they and welcome them when they do, I think, as a committee. And there's another butcher shop as well that is in the process of opening on 6th Street. Durazo Meat is where Century 21 was. They are opening up a butcher shop as well. Now, Bronx is a little different from what I understand. They've got cheeses and more deli items besides the meat. But that's exciting to see that we're getting these types of businesses. And,
Great.
we should make sure that we stop in and patronize them.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jeff, you have anything? Andy? Sigrid? Diane? Vicki, anything else? Mike? Sarah? And then Nicole's not here, so. Okay, the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.